Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Write for Your Life. I'm Caleb.
And I'm Timothy.
I don't know. Let's just get off with a little bit of small talk. How are you feeling this week? I know that we recorded last week, and to sort of date this a little bit, we had just put out the first trailer a couple of days ago, and then we have edited and scheduled the release of the first episode, but nothing's actually happened yet.
So really the only feedback that we've gotten is, people commenting about the trailer or us listening to it. And I have to say, listening to the edited version that you sent me after we recorded, it was an interesting experience because I've heard my voice a lot recording stuff, but it was like it's always weird listening to your own voice, but it didn't sound nearly as bad as it did in my head. It was like, hey, this is actually not bad.
I agree. This is the first time of me hearing my voice played back.
Oh man.
The funny thing is, as the day went on of me editing, I started hearing my own voice, how my voice sounds recorded, even after I stopped like editing and I was just talking throughout the day. And I was like, oh
Yes.
no, is this me learning what my voice sounds like? Or so I don't know if that's a similar experience for you.
It is. It kind of reached an equilibrium for me where it's like halfway between what I used to think my voice sounded like and halfway what I think my recorded voice sounds like. But you get used to it.
Yeah, as a result, I wind up thinking my recorded voice sounds better than it used to sound. So I think that's a positive if I'm going to be listening to me a lot.
Yeah. I'd say that's a good thing.
Yeah, my brain's a little slow this morning as
No
I
worries.
didn't sleep too well last night for some weird reason.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But the trailer, funny enough, I there were actually a lot of things in the trailer that I wanted to include that I didn't because I didn't want it to be over a minute long.
Yeah.
It's very interesting the things that I decided to keep and cut for the trailer.
Picking stuff for that is always difficult. Like the as soon as you have to cut something under a minute or two, it becomes very difficult to decide what you want to keep and what you want to not put in there.
Yeah, and I thought it was funny. I was like, boy, what am I gonna wind up putting in the trailer? My first thought was, are we gonna have enough? Are we gonna sound interesting enough for me to make a bunch of clips out of this, a bunch of short clips out of this? And then I got to it, and I was like, what? I was like, oh man, there's so many things that I want to put in here. So it was an interesting role reversal.
Hey, at least we think we're interesting. That's got to count for something.
Yeah, time will tell if we're actually interesting. I don't have a pretty segue this time around. I feel like last time I had a pretty interesting segue into the writing for last week. This week I don't, and I think that's okay. Well, let's dive right in.
Sounds good.
The writing for this week is I Yearn. I yearn. I yearn. It's the only way I can describe it, really. Everything seems so out of reach that any other word would be insufficient. My body yearns. It yearns to be strong and fast, to lift anything that stands in my way without strain, to tear down anything in my path without even bruising a knuckle, to fight any opponent with the certainty of victory, to run fast enough to feel like I am flying. My mind, it yearns to be intelligent and rational, to solve any mathematical problem, to quantify any unknowable, to understand every concept that the world possesses, to know the right answer before the question is even thought. My soul yearns. It yearns to be poetic and cunning, to write everything with meter and rhyme and always be on perfect time. To compose the feelings of my soul with words that have never been uttered, to attest to the things that we see with a beauty or a horror that defies our imagination, to devise plans and stories that leave the audience in awe. Yet I am shackled by my flesh, my brain, and my heart. My flesh, it is shackled by my blood and muscles, struggling with the curses of my blood that tear me apart from the inside, healing the scars of my life that have been painted over my body from the wear of physical years, tiring out my muscles from the standing back up over and over again, from the beatings of the day. My brain refusing to stay focused on the things I need, lingering too long on the things I shouldn't, sticking in the rut and mire of my own circling even as I write this very thing. My soul agonizing over every insignificant detail in a pile of trash that doesn't matter to anyone, even me. Agonizing over the suffering of those I am powerless to help, either through my incompetence or apathy. Hoping that tomorrow will be better than today, and sometimes, most times, my hope is failed. I have this feeling to overcome these things, but not hate myself because of them. There is only one way to describe it, really. I yearn.
Tim, what are your thoughts?
I mean, the first thought that I have is it's very symmetrical, and I always appreciate that. Anytime that there's such an intentional structure, I have an engineer brain. I like things to make sense that way, and I really enjoy that, and all the parallelism and stuff.
There's some writing principle that, again, has a fancy name that I do not have, where a book can start and end the same way. And I find that to be an interesting concept. So
Yeah.
for this, I intentionally wanted to wrap back around onto myself for that.
And after you read the entire thing, you have it's not necessarily a bait and switch in terms of meaning, but I had such a greater understanding of what you meant by it after reading those final two lines. Because at the beginning, obviously I get a little bit of what you're saying. You set the tone very early, but then all these specifics come along, and by the end of it, it's far more deep. And an interesting thing with that is a lot of this stuff is not necessarily specific as in, hey, here's a date and time where this happened. But these are all very specific things that happen. And I think an interesting thing with writing, especially writing like this, is that the more specific you are, because at that point you're talking about how you're feeling, what you're experiencing, what you're thinking about. Somehow, because it's more specific, that means it's more impactful to a general audience. And I don't know why that is. Somebody smarter than me could probably explain it, but I think that's really cool, and I really like how detailed you were and how specific you were with this.
Yeah, I think it's connection. You're having a peek into my world, particularly for this, into my own personal vulnerabilities with it. And that draws greater connection because it makes me as the author more human and it makes the reader more involved. And I don't go too into the details, but the particular part about the curses of my blood, right? I have an autoimmune disease that was inherited from my grandfather. I remember sitting there asking the doctor, because I'm a fairly healthy person. I try to work out regularly. I try to eat as good as I can. And I remember getting that news from the doctor. It's like, hey, you have this autoimmune disease. This is what it means. This is what it does. And I just kind of sat there and I was like, was there anything I could have done to avoid this? And it was no. There's nothing you can do. This is just something that you were born with that has now become activated. And that sort of left this like sitting there of like, okay, I am now going to have to try to outlive this curse that has been handed down to me.
So is that where the idea for this kind of came from, or was that just one of the things that led to you wanting to write this?
I think that's one of the things. I think the second thing is we both care very deeply about the things that we do in our day-to-day lives, right? The things that we strive for. And I've spent a large portion of my life in the background of athletics. And when you do that, you always wish to be stronger and faster and better. And there's always someone else who is stronger and faster and better than you are. And so it's this continual, like deep burning desire to want something more.
I was thinking about that yesterday. Me and my wife were talking about painting. A similar idea came up because she is a painter. When you've got something that you're actually like you're really caring about, something that you know you want deeply, it's almost like shackles, like you called them, become apparent. And at the same time, you're fighting harder against them. And it's like everything just becomes amplified when you really, really care about something and when you really, really want something. Because, for making food for dinner, none of this really applies because that's just like, whatever. But as soon as you start talking about writing or, in my case, writing music or things like that, it really, really comes out.
I think restraint is part of the creative process because there's beauty and creativity in the restraint, right? Like if you had access to everything at the same time and there was absolutely no limit on what you could do, I almost feel like we would be far less creative than more creative because we're not having to work around and through and with our current restraints. And
Yeah.
I find that way in my own life as well, where it's like, okay, I am now having to be more creative about the things that I eat and the exercises that I do because of the curse of my blood that breeds creativity. Even though it is a curse, you learn how to live with it.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about it in that way, but I guess with my misophonia, it's the same way. And it's been so long that I've had it that it's just kind of second nature. But there are a lot of things that I do in my life that probably few other people do because I had to be very creative about how I handle them. I hadn't really considered it in this light, but that makes perfect sense.
And that's a part of this yearning that happens, especially as we transition
Yeah.
into the back half of the piece. It is learning to live with the restraints that you have as an individual.
Yeah. And that key line in the last stanza, I have this feeling to overcome these things, but not hate myself because of them. That's really important.
Right, because if you don't learn to not hate yourself if you hate yourself because of your restraints, you will always find something to hate about yourself.
Yeah.
But if you find ways to overcome, you will find something to be proud of in yourself.
It's another one of those good one-liners. Technically a two-liner, but it works.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that is my general message: is it is okay to desire something more. It is okay to not put yourself down because you're not there yet.
And I guess living in that balance between those two is the creativity and how you grow. And I
Mhm.
guess really what life is about if you want to make it sound grandiose.
Yeah, because the yearning causes striving, and the striving causes improvement.
Hmm.
If the yearning causes desperation, and the desperation causes hate, then you wind up getting nowhere.
Well, I really like this piece. And I've enjoyed talking with you about it because I had read it and I had thoughts, but actually just sitting down and discussing it, I feel like I have a lot more out of it. And even though we've been friends for a long time, I know a little bit more about you. And I think that's really cool.
And that's the beauty of it. And I expect everyone who reads this will have some. I hope for them to connect in my weakness and in my
Yeah.
desire. Well, shall we move into the second piece?
Another beautiful segue.
Yeah, my segue is bedazzled this time, so it looks really nice. It doesn't go any faster, but it feels like it does.
Well, yeah, it's like putting the card in between the spokes of your bike.
Hmm.
It probably actually slows you down at that point, but you sound loud, and therefore you're fast.
Exactly. So the second thing is, what are we working on?
Well, I can start between when we recorded last and when we're recording this, I have been out of town basically the entire time, helping my brother-in-law fix up a house that he bought. So I haven't had a whole ton of time to actually do any writing. But I did plan, which I feel like is an important part of writing. You know, there's a couple long drives. You can't actually write anything down, but you can let stuff mull around in your head. And this upcoming week, I'm going to be on vacation for like 8 days, I think. And so it's going to be kind of like a little mini writing retreat, if you will. So I was just kind of prepping myself for that, figuring out not only planning like the story itself, but planning what I was going to write, when I was going to write, and how I was going to write. Because, you know, I know we're probably going to keep harping on this. We're both rather busy, so using that time efficiently is really important. So that it's not flashy or anything, but that's kind of what I've been doing.
Yeah, and what's that look like? I know for me, it's hard to write on vacation. The sort of regular rhythms of my days is what helps me. Even though they're more busy than vacation, it's easier to write because I have that blocked time. So how are you planning for this?
So the way that I've ended up writing is I'll know about a day or two in advance if I have some free time on a day. This is in my normal life. And so I'll just, hey, I'm going to write for an hour and a half, 2 hours, maybe even 30 minutes this upcoming day. So my plan is to kind of do the same thing on vacation because we've got a couple days where we have stuff planned. And then there's going to be quite a bit of time where my wife is either painting or doing something else in that creative space in which I'll plan to do the same thing. So basically we're just going to plan, hey, here's a 4-hour chunk. We're going to do our creative things together. And we'll probably plan that like a day in advance. So it's always been kind of, you know, playing it a little bit by ear for me. But as long as I know a little bit in advance, the key thing I think is setting a goal in my mind when I sit down. Generally, I try to make it a realistic goal, but you know, a goal of this is what I want to get done in this amount of time. This is what I want to have accomplished. That way, I'm not just sitting there trying to figure out what to do. As soon as I sit down, it's immediate. All right, I'm working on this thing. It's time to get into the zone. And it's been somewhat successful so far. I mean, you know, I haven't been doing this for more than a couple months, but it makes sense at the moment.
I'm glad that you're able to like plan out that time because I know when I go on vacation, my brain just shuts off. It's like, you know what we're going to think about? Nothing.
I mean, that's what vacation is for most of the time.
Yeah, but I also know that you and your wife, part of the doing these creative endeavors is part of the relaxation, is part of the restorative piece.
Mm-hmm.
I think we both tend to we're fairly analytical, and having a space to work our brains in a different way is part of relaxation.
Yeah.
It's sort of that principle of like if you work with your mind, rest with your hands. If you work with your hands, rest with your mind.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's why so many engineers get into dancing, because it's something, you know, most of us have sedentary jobs and we do a lot with our mind in an analytical way. And so dancing lets us move our bodies, relax the analytical mind, and just let the creative mind flow. And so it's essentially a complete opposite. It's a similar principle.
I'm just gonna say, you know, that's why engineers get into dancing is 100% making the trailer for this episode. You said that, and I was like, that's going in the trailer for sure.
Nice. I'll try and think up those for the next couple recordings as well. I'll have a list of them ready, and they'll be completely natural, of course.
Of course, because that's how we make this is by pre-planning every word that we're going to say down to the very last detail.
It's scripted. I'm reading this right now. I've scripted the ums and everything.
Scripting the ums. You know how many times I had to remove lip smacks and different things like that of my different lot that right there, you just heard it.
Yeah. I feel like over time we'll get cleaner with our speech, but
Until then, I'm going to be painstakingly editing all of the ums out to make us sound much more intelligent than we act. No, I'm going to say this to make us sound to remove the burden of our tongues and our minds from clouding our thoughts.
there we go. There it is. Well, other than editing our caveman voices, what have you been working on?
That's most of it is editing. So the first episode that you all heard, and both of the trailers and all of that, I have never edited anything in my life. I was doing so much Googling. I cannot tell you how many times I was like, it's the scene from Lego Batman. I was like, computer, how do I do this? Basically. And that was a lot of, it's been a lot of fun because it's different. And I was able to sort of get in a zone
Yep.
where I was like, oh, yes, this feels good. This feels natural. And then there were other times where I spent 15 minutes trying to cut something together to sound nice because I realized this. I have a tendency to say or make a noise and then continue my sentence. And so cutting off that noise without cutting off the beginning of my sentence was incredibly difficult for the
It's
amount
brutal.
of times I did it. Yeah, it's brutal. Besides that, I continue to read my book a little bit, which I continue. I'm about to enter a particularly strong chapter in the book where it was one that I had considered. It was an idea that I had to stop and be like, should I even write this? I don't know. Because it's very strong, it's very forward, there's a lot of language, and it's a very visceral scene that to me it makes me not necessarily squeamish, but it makes me take a step back every time I read it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got to that and I read it, and I think it was like, this isn't as bad as I imagined it when I was like writing it. And I think that's comforting to me because there's a level of restraint there.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about usually when I write my pieces for the week that I post on the Substack. So essentially both this and my Substack writings come out at the same day at the same time. And because I've spent more time on this, I've thought a little bit about what I'm going to write for this week, but transparency, it's Tuesday and it comes out Wednesday morning. So I have T-minus 24 hours, which I usually wind up pushing it this close when I'm busy.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to see how that goes.
I'm excited to see what comes out of it.
I think this week I'm going to write on fear because I've been going through a tremendous amount of that over the past week, ever since I messaged you about doing this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have lots of thoughts about it. By the time that this comes out, it will have already have been published.
We're time travelers.
We are time travelers. I know what's going to happen before you do.
He 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 he.
All right, let's move into our last segment. What have we been consuming this week from a creative standpoint? I know for me personally, this is good. Obviously, I am a human being and I have TikTok on my phone. And for some reason, things will swing back around that, they'll show up on your For You page and they'll swing around and you'll be like, oh yeah, this is there a lot. And then it disappears and then it reappears.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the things that has reappeared is the anime Hajime no Ippo, which is a boxing anime that I love very dearly because I love most boxing things. I love all of the Rocky movies. I watch a little bit of boxing from time to time, and because I find it to be it's a good metaphor, and it's also a very fun sport to watch. And it is about this. It follows like a very what I call like generic plot line where it's about this kid who is getting bullied and he's seeing some boxers like train and he wants to become like them and he winds up working to become a very talented boxer. And I I really connect with his sort of inability to do anything at the beginning, where he struggles to do even the most basic tasks. He is so driven to accomplish even these basic base things that, you wind up becoming excellent at the small stuff.
Yeah.
That's something I deeply connect with. I feel like a lot of people can, because it's about the little guy. It's about the person who, like he had to believe in himself before really anybody else does, right? That's the big That's the big triumph, right? Is once you learn to believe in yourself, you can accomplish a lot. I'm not going to go too much into spoilers about it from this anime from 20 years ago, but give it a watch. It's not super long, but there's a lot of charming characters in it, and I've found that to be very inspiring this week.
Yeah, that sounds right up your alley. Again, topical for today's reading, so it all ties together.
It very much is.
I have not been able to read or listen to a whole ton for reasons stated previously. So I'm going to give one of the cop-out answers that I've been saving for a rainy day such as this, which is Brandon Sanderson, because I'm pretty much always working on a Brandon Sanderson book, interspersing it with other things. Currently, most of the way through the second book in the second Mistborn series. I don't remember the name of it.
You don't remember the name of the book you're reading?
No, I don't look at the cover. I'm reading the inside.
There's a metaphor there. There's a life lesson there. I'm gonna let the audience figure that one out.
It's something it alliterates. I know that. At least I think it does. Maybe that's the other one. I don't. Man.
Oh no.
I quit. It's done.
Don't quit, dude. This is episode 2. You can't quit on episode 2. That's an episode 37 problem.
We're still in the probation period.
We're still in the probation period. We haven't hit the monetization number yet.
That'll be a while. Anyway, yeah. So I've been I've been reading the second book of the second Mistborn series. And it's always interesting reading Brandon Sanderson because he's such a powerhouse in the fantasy space, and he does so many things well. And yet, at the same time, in terms of style and voice, I want to write nothing like him. And that's not to say it's bad. I love reading his books. They're so good. And I have always appreciated the world building and the planning and how he sprinkles in things and how he handles questions, like the reader having questions. It's very impressive. But it's just not the style I want to write in. And so it's really interesting, again, kind of like how I talked about last week, reading these books in a more analytical way. Still enjoying them, but trying to figure out, how is he doing this thing? Why is he including this detail and not including that detail? How is he using an unspoken thing to describe the scene? Not mentioning something specifically so that your attention is drawn to it. That's something that I've noticed specifically over the past couple days, and something that I really enjoy doing as well. So that I'm pretty much always going to be reading a Sanderson book, but that's my cop-out for this week.
Don't worry, I have plenty of cop-outs on the backlog of things that I genuinely love that I'm just waiting for the opportunity to talk about.
Excellent.
Yeah, Sanderson he has so many books, right? It's like Stephen King and some of these other writers where it's like they write so many books that you could be reading their books for such a long time. As someone who, we're both trying to be writers, that analytical approach of like, what makes this stick? What makes this stay? And I think Brandon Sanderson says something like the book that took off was like his 12th or 17th book.
Yeah.
It took a long, long time. So it took so many attempts. And I often find that, you look at, there's like Lee Child and there's a couple other writers where it's like, oh my gosh, you have so many books. And it's like, well, it took so many books before things start to, catch on.
Yeah.
They had to keep trying again and again and again. I often find that line between success and failure is how many times are you willing to give this thing a go?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's why so many people are not what they would consider successful until at least their mid to late 30s. Because oftentimes it does just take so much time to, hone your skills and then just keep trying until that perfect opportunity hits. Because sometimes it's, pretty soon. And then other times, I mean, yeah, I think it was 12 books for Sanderson. I mean, that's a lot.
Yeah, because I also think about Good Mythical Morning, right? Really big on YouTube. They have this essentially a media empire. They have over 1,000 episodes. Like 1,000 episodes. If we make 1,000 of these, I don't know what we would do. Like I genuinely have no idea what I would do if we were able to hit the point where we made 1,000 of these. Could you imagine doing something 1,000 times? If 10% of those, if you spent a tenth of your time trying to find your footing, that's 100 episodes. That's 100 attempts trying to figure things out. I think circle this back around and maybe put a ribbon on it. Like, do you yearn strongly enough to be willing to try something 1,000 times?
I guess we'll find out on the 1,000th episode.
Guess we'll find out on episode 1,000. If you're on episode 2, scroll all the way up to episode 1,000. If you're a brand new listener at this point, I guess if we make 1,000 episodes and you're starting at episode 1 and then you find episode 2, it's just like watching One Piece at that point. So more power to you.
Yeah.
With that, keep writing, keep listening, and keep being inspired.